The next retort that you'll hear from lefties on this issue is that, oh, well, people need to be engaging in direct action and mutual aid instead of voting. I don't buy that instead of bullshit. Because if you have time to engage in direct action, mutual aid, community organizing, all of that takes more time, effort, labor, and resources to do than simply casting a vote will. So if a person doesn't have the time to simply cast a vote because of a variety of hurdles that might be in their life, they're not gonna magically have that time to dedicate to extra electoral activity. Like that, there's a contradiction there. It doesn't make any sense. So instead of doesn't mean anything, right? Like you should be voting and doing more outside of that if you can, which is always what my take has been. So Briahna Joy Gray posting the stupidest shit I've ever seen, as always. So essentially a standard Briahna Joy Gray tweet. You don't have to vote for Joe Biden. Well, in an abstract sense, nobody's forcing you to do it. However, the alternative is dog shit and is actively harmful to minority groups. Now, of course, Joe Biden is also harmful to minority groups, just not as much. So if we look at it from a utilitarian standpoint, it's probably going to be better to have Joe Biden in office than Donald Trump or DeSantis. That said, because third parties are not mathematically viable because we have a first-past-the-post system, we cannot have any other option other than Joe Biden and Donald Trump/DeSantis, whoever the Republican is going to be. So the least bad option is then going to be the Joe Brandon. And ideally, we, work to do a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party and then get a proportional voting system in place so that third parties are actually fucking mathematically viable without the worry of spoiling. Which is why this is a really stupid take. So then this person replies saying, this tweet can also be read as, quote, I really don't care that there are high stakes in this election. A big fat middle finger, especially to those most affected by the results of this election. So I will say, if you are in a hard red state or a hard blue state and you want to cast a protest vote or whatever, which doesn't really do anything. So really quickly, just for any lefties out there who are unaware, the Libertarian Party, which is literally just the Republican Party, but they're more open about their disdain for the age of consent and also want like neo-feudalism more than the Republican Party does and also are more okay with weed. The Libertarian Party literally gets higher percentage of the votes in the general election than the Green Party does historically. And the Green Party is seen as the left-wing third-party option, the biggest one that is on the ballot, etc., etc., etc. So, like, if we're trying to do a third-party thing, we're going to have to do a little bit better than the Libertarian Party, and they're not doing too well electorally either when it comes to vote percentages. The Green Party gets around 1% of the general election vote on a good day. Howie Hawkins, that Whomegalol, got less than 1% in 2020. So, like, it's not happening. Like, mathematically speaking, it is not possible. It is not happening until we move past a first-past-the-post voting system, allow for third parties to be mathematically viable without the chances of spoiling, and also then, because of those preconditions being met, allow for third parties to build up relevance within the system and challenge the two major parties. It's a lot of fucking work to do that, and it's likely going to have to happen on a local level, and then a state level, and then hopefully you get enough states on a proportional voting system that you have a good argument for getting it federally. Because until then, it's not happening. And left-wingers really want to skip steps because they rightfully don't like the abusive relationship we're in with the Democratic Party where they are the lesser evil, and it is certainly better to have them in a position of power than it is Republicans, but like, you can't skip those steps. It's not possible. This is why the Green Party running presidential candidates over and over and over again as a vanity project doesn't really seem to do anything. In fact, the Green Party is doing worse than it has historically recently. Now, who knows if Cornel West switching from the People's Party, that scam, to the Green Party, that other scam that is at least less of a scam because they actually have ballot access and hold like a couple small local seats here and there. Maybe he might get a little bit more, but it is what it is. Only 40% of the population vote? Yeah, exactly. Like, we need to enfranchise way more people. Get a lot more people voting. So, like, lefties really want to skip steps, and I understand why, because we understand that the system is fucked and it should be a lot better. But unfortunately, you have to do work to make that happen, and you can't just post on Twitter about it to make these changes in your life. I think voting should be mandatory, same. Ideally, though, we are able to educate our people more in that instance as well. Anyway, so now Briahna replies saying, white men telling me they care more about historically marginalized groups than I do makes me feel young, like it's 2016 again. Thanks for the memories. So this doesn't mean anything. This is stupid. Like, if you look at the states post Roe v. Wade, that have legislated protections for access to an abortion, they're all blue states. If you look at the states that have made abortion illegal, they're all red states, right? If you look at the states that are passing protections for trans people, for accessing care, and also for like trans refugee states, they're all blue states. If you look at the ones who are criminalizing trans existence and queer existence broadly, and the states that are being fled from by trans and queer people, it's red states. So it's almost like, at a bare minimum harm reduction level, which saying those two words is immediately going to trigger all manner of lefties out there who want to skip a variety of steps in getting to a better society, that is a element of harm reduction. The thing is, the immediate response you're going to get from dumbass lefties on this issue is like the meme of, I'll show these fascists what for, and then they drop a vote for the Democrats in the ballot box, and like fascists still end up winning. And then in this case, it's like, I'll show these liberals and conservatives what for, and then you drop a ballot in for third parties, and the fascists still end up winning. Like, it doesn't do anything. Electoralism is the bare minimum civic engagement. Simply voting is the bare minimum civic engagement, and you should be doing more, and I advocate that people do more all the fucking time, right? This is a historical theme of my channel. That said, the majority of the time, it is not going to be overwhelmingly difficult for somebody to vote. So in the primary, vote for the best option. In the Democratic primary, you vote for the best option. And then if they don't win, you vote for the least bad option in the general, which is going to be the Democrat, unfortunately. So like, if it is not overwhelmingly difficult for you to vote, that's the process that is likely to render not as bad outcomes for people in society. That said, if it is overwhelmingly difficult for you to vote because you're in a very voter-suppressed area, which coincidentally, Republicans are more likely to engage in voter suppression and legislate voter suppression, Democrats are more likely to fight against it, mostly because, not that they care actually a lot, but more so that Democrats understand that, historically speaking, the higher voter turnout is, the more people vote, the more likely it is Democrats win, and the lower voter turnout is, the less likely it is for Democrats to win. So it's more like a self-preservation kind of thing for them, but it has the added benefit of enfranchising more people into the system, which is good. Of course, they don't fight as hard as they could for it, and there's a lot of obstruction in the way that our legislative system works that kind of stops a lot of it that they do try to do. But anyway, if it is overwhelmingly difficult for you to vote because of the voter suppression, because you have a lot of dependents like kids and whatnot you got to worry about because you work a lot of hours at your job and it's hard to take time off, because you can't like pay your bills otherwise and all this kind of stuff, I understand not casting a vote, right? But if that's not the case for you, then following the vote for the best option in the primary, vote for the least bad option was the Democrats in the general, good advice, I think. And the next retort that you'll hear from lefties on this issue about this is that, people need to be engaging in direct action and mutual aid instead of voting. I don't buy that instead of bullshit. Because if you have time to engage in direct action, mutual aid, community organizing, all of that takes more time, effort, labor, and resources to do than simply casting a vote will. So if a person doesn't have the time to simply cast a vote because of a variety of hurdles that might be in their life, they're not going to magically have that time to dedicate to extra electoral activities. Like that, there's a contradiction there. It doesn't make any sense. So instead of doesn't mean anything, right? Like you should be voting and doing more outside of that if you can, which is always what my take has been. But anyway, so we got a reply here. It's not my fault that you either willingly or unwillingly are choosing to advocate and practice against the best way to protect marginalized communities like the LGBTQIA+ community, which is to secure as much Democratic seats anywhere as possible, including the presidency. That's a fair statement given the context that we live in, which is not ideal and not what I would want it to be, but we're in an abusive relationship with the Democratic Party. Brianna replies, do LGBTQIA+ people need healthcare? Do gay people live in predominantly black Kalamazoo that Governor Whitmer is allowing to be poisoned without a word? How's President Joe Manchin's agenda working out? Wasn't it great when Obama codified Roe? Yeah, so, like I say, we are in an abusive relationship with the Democratic Party. But the simple fact of the matter is, in a first-past-the-post voting system where only two parties are viable, those two being the Democrats and the Republicans, it is going to be worse to have a Republican in a seat of power than for Democrats. That is a simple reality. It is not the ideal reality. It is not the one that I advocate for. It's just the one that we happen to exist in. It's not my choosing. It is not my fault. But that's where we are. Once again, the states that have post-Roe v. Wade being overturned, the states that have codified protections allowing for abortion are blue states. The ones that are making abortion illegal are red states. The states that are being fled from, that are legislating all manner of bigotry and oppression against trans and queer people are red states. The ones that are passing protections for trans and queer people are blue states. The states that are not pushing to remove CRT from the classrooms are all in blue states, and the ones that are trying to remove CRT, aka mentions of, the history of this country, the racism that was founded upon, and the ongoing racism that has spawned from that, which hurts a variety of marginalized groups on the basis of class. Those are all red states that are trying to do that are trying to do this book burning, that are trying to do this rewriting of history. Now, Democrats are not a lot better, but they're a little bit. And it is certainly preferable to have that when that's the only other option. So we as leftists want to provide for there to be another option, but once again, that requires a lot of on-the-ground work at the local level, and then eventually the state level, and then eventually, hopefully, you get enough states doing a proportional voting system that we can advocate for it federally. But you can't skip those steps. Historically speaking, voting for the Green Party hasn't done shit. Because mathematically speaking, they are not viable. So I found this because Shark00, friend of the show, quote tweeting saying, common briahna L, and then has this screenshot from 2017. At NPR Politics, these guys are 100% wrong. Re the importance of the SCOTUS in support of HRC. Yeah, it is a bit unfortunate, isn't it? If Hillary Clinton won in 2016, and she lost mostly because she's a horrible candidate, she would have nominated, at the very least, for milquetoast liberals in the Supreme Court. Or even like some moderately conservative liberals, but certainly not fucking Kavanaugh and Amy Covid Barrett, etc., etc. And we would not be in the Supreme Court position that we're in right now. Because contrary to popular belief, it seems like even liberals have kind of forgotten about this. We have 3 branches in our government. You've got the executive branch, that's where the president is, and his administration. You also have the legislative branch, which is the Senate and the House. And then there's a secret third thing that not a lot of people pay attention to, which is the judicial branch. Meaning that they are the people that decide what laws are constitutional and which aren't. Meaning that even if people on the left control the executive branch in the presidency and the legislative branch in majorities in the House and Senate, if the conservatives in this country still control the judicial branch, we can get laws passed that are good for people, but the judicial branch with a bunch of conservative activist judges can just say, well, actually, no, those good laws are actually no good because they're non-constitutional because I'm in a position of high priesthood. I'm allowed to make these decisions, and I'm also not elected. I'm nominated by people who are elected, so there's a level of disparity there. So it's not really a democratic process that got me as a judge in that position to begin with, yada, 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 right? So, like, it's the stupidest fucking conversation. It is a waste of time and air, and I'm tired of having to relitigate it every single 4 years. And coincidentally, it only happens every single 4 years because for a lot of people who engage with this, so obviously it's Briahna Joy Gray's job to engage with politics all the time, but for a lot of the people that don't, it's usually like once every 4 years thing, because the majority of people only pay attention to politics every 4 years. That seems to be changing, at least on the social media landscape, because that everything is very politically charged now and it's talked about all the time. But for the average person, they're only really paying attention to politics every 4 years. Sometimes people will go out and vote in, midterm elections and whatever, but voter turnout isn't very high to begin with, even in the general election, much less midterm elections. So, like, it's just not good. Anyway, I'm tired of this fucking conversation. It's the same thing every fucking time. And it's mathematically proven that voting for third parties thing does not work. It hasn't worked. It produced nothing. So, we need to change the system to allow for third parties to be viable. But that requires a lot of work that people don't want to do. If Vosh said that high priest shit first, it's so accurate because it hurts now, that was me. Actually, that's not true. It was kind of both of us. I was the first person, at least in this sphere, to call them the Grand Wizards, to refer to the Supreme Court as the Grand Wizards of this country, because I think that's funny, and also seems to be kind of accurate, given the conservative makeup of the court at this moment. So, that was me. And anytime Vosush might have said it is because fans of mine will also be in his chat, and then say that, and then he reads it. Yeah, every other leftist ideas were mine first. That's true. So, like, I didn't say high priest first, but I did say grand wizard first. Anyway, it's dumb, it's stupid, it's stupid, it's dumb, it's dumb, it's stupid, and it's stupid.